We lost one of the all-time greats this month. Val Kilmer could and did do it all, from stage to writing to acting to producing, directing, and even singing on more than just the Doors movie soundtrack.
Come on, let's get some tacos.
Tyler, over on the Mothership channel, just released a wonderfully thoughtful list of his top 10 performances, and while we can argue on the order depending on when and how you saw him first, you can't argue with all the entries being great watches. Unfortunately, you can't say the same about Kilmer's horror output.
Well, things didn't work out.
While he had some genuinely fun horror-adjacent titles like Red Planet, The Island of Dr. Moreau, and The Ghost in the Darkness, which I kid you not can be looked at as a slasher movie starring lions, much of his horror was straight-to-video. One that wasn't straight-to-video and has a more interesting story about its making than what we see on screen is Twixt. Later called Betwixt Now and Sunrise, also stars an Oscar-nominated legend and was written, produced, and directed by one of cinema's most prolific directors, who has as many classics as he does hot messes. Let's look at the journey of Val Kilmer and one of horror's more strange entries in Twixt. On the outside looking in, Twixt is a weird mishmash of genres and styles that never really mesh together.
That's my favorite part.
I remember renting it in '09 when it came to my Blockbuster, and not really feeling it, and now watching the definitive cut that came out a couple years ago, well, I feel the same.
You come with me right now, and take a look at the doozy.
I see what was attempted, and knowing how the movie was envisioned, I see what could have been, but the final product is still a mess. It's a very personal and heartfelt mess, but a mess nonetheless. Twixt has a narrator played by Tom Waits who is reuniting with Coppola from their Dracula collaboration, giving us the rundown of the story, but after the beginning he never comes back.
Just stop and put it down. It's really not a joke.
Hall Baltimore, who is described by other characters as a low-rent Stephen King, is traveling on a book tour and finds himself in a small town to promote his latest works. This town is so small that the bookstore is also the hardware store, and Baltimore finds himself drinking early and often and trying to make money. He's kind of known for one specific thing and is trying to make something different for himself rather than just to sell books. He's haunted by a tragedy with the death of his daughter and is at odds with his wife about his drinking, his career, and their very strained relationship.
You can't speak to me like this. Just grow up.
He's approached by the town sheriff, played by a scenery-chewing Bruce Dern, who is also a part-time writer, of course. Sheriff LaGrange shows him a corpse with a stake through her heart and explains about the history of the town as well as the gang of roving teens across the water that he, old man shakes a fist at the sky, raves about. LaGrange wants to collaborate on a story with Hall, and Hall goes into a drunken bender that also gives him vivid dreams, and the town is dreamlike even when he's awake.
Written by Hall Baltimore and Bobby LaGrange. Sweet.
He meets eccentric locals, vampire preteens, and has conversations with Edgar Allan Poe, who stayed in the town, and invades his dream to discuss writing and despair.
You! My God, Edgar Poe.
Of the 12 or so storylines that appear in the movie, it's hard to latch on to one or really care about any of them in particular. The final cut at least does a good job of keeping the movie grounded.
Scream all you want. Even God can't hear you now.
While the original cut has Baltimore realizing and admitting he has guilt over the death of his daughter and writing another bestseller before visiting the morgue and seeing that the victim with the stake through her heart is actually 12-year-old V, played by Elle Fanning, who he's been talking to the whole movie, the final cut actually knows when to stop.
Nevermore.
The movie ends where it should have, with an emotional Baltimore admitting his guilt and letting the sadness out before the credits roll and a very haunting score closes out the movie. We don't know if he ever wakes up or passes away peacefully in his sleep after letting his demons go. There's no profit to be made off his own sorrow, just sleep and personal absolution. Much of the movie is kind of low-rent looking and silly at points, but the three principal leads all do well. Dern is doing what he's done for much of his career, especially late in his life with a crotchety but believable town sheriff.
How's it feel to be the bargain basement Stephen King?
While Elle Fanning is charismatic and tragic as V, who is self-conscious and unsure of life, or afterlife in this case. The movie belongs to Kilmer, though. He plays the character straight no matter what's going on, does great impressions of Brando and James Mason while his character is drunk, and the emotions he displays at the end are almost worth the price of admission.
I'm so ashamed. I should have gone. That's my little girl.
Again, the movie isn't great, but I did mention it has a backstory, and that does give the project more soul than you'd expect. One of the interesting aspects, and unfortunately maybe why the movie is kind of a mess that it is the editing style, or experiment rather, that director Coppola wanted to try with it. He called this newfound style he invented live editing, and envisioned himself as somewhat of a conductor during screenings of the film, where he would implement a sort of choose-your-own-adventure angle to the movie and shorten or lengthen scenes based on audience reaction. This was, of course, impractical, as he couldn't be at every screening, and then there was home video, but this is the same guy that would try another gimmick a couple decades later with Megalopolis. William Castle would have been proud. The final cut that was made incorporated different versions of all the scenes, and at a paltry 80-ish minutes, it just doesn't work as you can see on screen. The frenzied change probably stems from what this film was made for in the first place, an apology and forgiveness. Hall Baltimore in the film is most haunted by the death of his child, which he feels responsible for and wants to do something just for him, instead of just continuing to put out witch novels that he's known for. Francis Ford Coppola felt guilty over the death of his son in a boating accident, just like the accident in the film, and wanted to make a more personal film, a film for him instead of stuff like Apocalypse Now or the Godfather trilogy. The pain that Kilmer puts out with Baltimore coming to terms with his guilt and sadness is a direct avatar for Coppola and his own guilt and sadness. Hopefully Coppola could finally forgive himself like Hall does at the end of his journey. Twixt had a budget of $7 million, and while it only made back a little over $1 million of that at the box office, which was mostly international, until the new cut anyway, and had generally negative reviews, none of that matters. This movie wasn't for the critics or even the fans. It was for Francis Ford Coppola, and Val Kilmer knew exactly what that meant. Doing this movie was just the kind of guy Val was, and the outpouring from former colleagues on social media confirms that. Particularly a post from Coppola himself, who first saw Val when he was 14 and knew what we would get for nearly 4 decades. Val Kilmer really didn't do horror often, only in straight-to-video affairs, but there's a solid chance he was great in all of them. While I can't speak to the merits of things like the TV movie Murder in the Rue Morgue, or straight-to-video and streaming flicks The Thaw, Seven Below, The Super, or that much-maligned The Snowman, I'd wager a guess that he was at least entertaining in them, and at most a reason to give them a watch. What I can vouch for is that he gave us great fictional characters like Gay Perry in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Iceman in the Top Gun movies, Simon Templar in The Saint, Chris from Heat, and Nick Rivers from Top Secret. Furthermore, he didn't just play, but became Doc Holliday, Jim Morrison, and John Holmes. I can't name everything he was in, or this would just become a list of movies, but pick your favorite.
Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the Store tab on any of our JoBlo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some.
While the horror genre eluded Val Kilmer for the most part, or maybe it was the other way around, he had the ability to make any movie worth a spin, regardless of what category it fell in. He is truly the type of actor that made immortal characters that will be enjoyed for generations, and even gave real life or existing fictional characters some of their most defining on-screen portrayals. When I think of him, I'll forever think of the Kinks song Celluloid Heroes. Val Kilmer and his roles will be forever eternal because celluloid heroes never feel any pain, and celluloid heroes never really die. Thanks, Val.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.